This is what happens with persistent conflict with your partner, especially if you're in the area of criticism and defensiveness as a response, and contempt and stonewalling. Let's take a look at what happens in stonewalling from a neuroscience point of view. If you've had that conflict before, your brain starts to notice the pattern. And there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, which is very sensitive to patterns. And so by the second time you've had a similar conflict, your brain notices that pattern. And what you might notice when you get into that conflict, you get triggered more easily. It's like your partner says something, or you say something to your partner, and immediately you're emotionally triggered because your brain says, this is what's happening. This is the response. It's got into this pattern. And even though that pattern's painful to the brain, it's part of survival. It knows that this is relatively safe, meaning we're not going to die from this. It's going to be incredibly painful, but we'll survive. And that's okay from an evolutionary point of view, according to your brain. So now what happens is you are so emotionally flooded, being set off by your partner saying something, especially if it's criticism or contempt. And so you get this flooding of overwhelming emotion, and you just shut down and you stop responding to your partner. And what's happening in your brain from a neuroscience perspective is that those emotions are taking the logical, rational part of your brain offline. So you can't think rationally or logically. You don't have access to those parts of the brain when you're flooded emotionally, feeling so much emotion that it's overwhelming. And so you just sit there, kind of like a deer in the headlights. You just have no response. Or you just want to get the hell out of Dodge. You want to get away from your partner. And if this happens, you can communicate to your partner that you need a break and that you will be back, giving your partner that reassurance that you will be back to discuss when you've settled your emotions and the logical, rational part of your brain that can actually hold a conversation is back online. So if you're noticing any of these behaviors, the criticism, being defensive because you feel like you're being attacked with criticism, you're feeling this contempt, you've lost respect for your partner, and in return, you are shutting down emotionally or physically needing to leave. These are actually 4 signs of divorce. These are 4 signs that your relationship is heading for breakup. And this is when a lot of couples think of couples therapy, but it's almost too late because your brains have locked in these patterns. And once your brain locks them in and it's like a habit, it's very difficult to reverse that. But it can be done. Obviously, couples can recover. That's what couples therapy is all about. But if your partner won't go to couples therapy, or you just don't have the time to go to couples therapy, you can use hypnosis to resolve all that emotion. You may be having conflicts that aren't resolvable, so they're persistent, they keep coming up. The same way of interacting around these conflicts are continuing because you've got one way of thinking about this conflict, your partner has another way of thinking, and nobody's budging on their position. And so you have these persistent conflicts. And I want you to know that this is normal, that 2 out of 3 conflicts that you have with your partner are not resolvable. There's no solution to them. That means that for every conflict that you do resolve, there's going to be twice as many that you can't resolve that will keep coming up through the course of your relationship. And often, as a result of these conflicts not being resolved, you start to feel resentment. You start to feel that your position is right. And that's when you enter into those 4 signs of a breakup. Feeling like your position is right can often lead to criticism. And that reaction to criticism is defensiveness, especially if there's all this emotion wrapped inside of that. It's hard to have a logical conversation. In fact, it's almost impossible to access the logical, rational part of your brain when you're feeling emotional. These conflicts can't be resolved with the conscious part of your brain. You need to access the unconscious part of your mind because it contains all the resources, all the answers. Because every second, your unconscious mind takes in millions of bits of information and it stores those. It never forgets. It always remembers. Every single second of information, that's a lot of information that you're not even aware of, that you can use to solve what's going on in your relationship. So with hypnosis, we connect you to the most resourceful state that you have experienced to resolve what's going on in your relationship, what's really going on for you in your relationship. Because this conflict, the criticism, the contempt, those are symptoms of feeling invalidated, underappreciated, unacknowledged, and probably for you, there's something specific to your personality and your history that's going on for you inside of these conflicts. So if you're noticing these signs of breakup, of divorce, and they've been going on for longer than 30 days, it's really time to do something. You want to get your brain out of that pattern of conflict. And you can do that so effectively and easily with hypnosis. The answers are already there. All the resources, all the answers to resolving what's happening right now. Maybe what seems to be a way of being, a pattern in your relationship. And you can do this on your own without your partner. And you can have a breakthrough in your relationship. One of the ways to avoid a breakup in the first place is to not let this resentment build up or go on for more than 30 days. Even at 30 days, your brain is starting to see a definite pattern. So you need to deal with any feelings of resentment, feeling unappreciated, invalidated, not acknowledged in your relationship. You need to treat that as soon as possible. And if it's been around for a while, you need to do something about it in the next 30 days. So let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk soon.